Welcome to Show Your Light. Real women, real stories, real turning points. If you need hope, courage, or a reminder you're not alone, press play. If you're building something, a business, a life, a new chapter, these stories will meet you where you are. This podcast is a companion to the book, Show Your Light Collective. And because we're recording in the podcast studio, you can listen here or you can watch the filmed version on YouTube. I'm Susie Sprigg, founder of Show Your Light, and the creator and host of this collective. Supported by writing coach Louisa Herridge, published by LH Publishing. Right then, let's begin. This episode is from Rebecca Clare. Rebecca is a child and family nurse with over 20 years' experience, and she helps parents understand their child's behaviour and feel confident that they are the expert in their child. In The Girl Who Couldn't Read, Rebecca shares how early struggle, bullying, and public shame at school shaped her self-belief, leaving her feeling behind or not enough, even as she builds a successful career caring for others. A later ADHD diagnosis reframed everything she thought was wrong with her and revealed what had always been there: intelligence, depth, and strength. This chapter is about rewriting old stories and reclaiming your voice. This is a reminder that your past doesn't disqualify you. It can become your credibility.
Today, I sit here writing this chapter, a person that my younger self would never recognise. I've stepped into my light and I know I'm the expert in what I do. I don't say this lightly, it's taken me a long time to recognise this and have the confidence to say it out loud. You too can own your experience and proudly declare yourself an expert. 3 years ago, it was a business coach that first highlighted that I was an expert. I didn't believe it then, but she did, and I borrowed that belief until I held it myself. So here I am lending you that belief, inviting you to step into your expert area, and by the end of this chapter, I hope you feel the same confidence I now do. Let's go back, way back to when I was at school. There are common themes that have become apparent throughout reflecting on my life. I never really felt like I fit in. This feeling was reinforced with bullying in primary school. Outwardly, I seemingly had the perfect life. We weren't poor, we went on nice holidays, we had a lovely home and a car. I appeared a happy-go-lucky child with a head in the clouds. In school, though, I really struggled academically. Particularly, I struggled to read, so I'd make up the stories in my reading book to hide it. Then, as I began to improve at reading, the issue changed. I could read the words, but I didn't absorb what I read and could read the same sentence repeatedly without realising. I have a memory in primary school of standing up in assembly with my whole class. One by one, the class reading out their work, except me. When it was my turn, a member of staff in front of everyone said, "Read hers, she can't read." I felt ashamed and inadequate, unable to do what my peers could. That moment controlled my narrative for years, though I never admitted it. When I moved on to high school, I chose a school that none of my primary school classmates went to. Here, I had to make friends, and in the most part, I did. However, I still never really fit into one group of people, but I had a lot of friends. I assumed it was because those groups had history. They'd grown up and been to primary school together. I worked hard at high school, socially and academically. I had one particular teacher who was my English teacher, Miss Needham, that was instrumental in helping me beginning to believe in myself. I'm sure she said she was dyslexic, but whatever challenges she had overcome, she empowered me to do the same. My love of English and writing was born. She left at the end of year 8, but I still wish she knew the difference she made, even 30 years later. High school wasn't easy, but I was motivated and worked hard. I found strategies around needing to read, like renting Pride and Prejudice on VHS from Blockbuster, so I could understand the story and do the work without reading the book. This was the mid-90s. There was no Audible, internet or ChatGPT to rely on back then. There was a bully at high school who tried to target me. I'd been bullied before, and this time I wasn't going to allow it. I stood up to her, answered her back, and she left me alone. I'd found strength to acknowledge my own identity and not let someone try and break that down. I smashed my GCSEs, achieving 5 A's and 6 B's, but I didn't want to go to college. The careers advisor told me that I was too clever not to do my A-levels, so reluctantly I went to college to study them. College was hard. The teaching model didn't suit how I learned or needed to be assessed. I felt lost and out of my depth there. I wasn't happy and I missed the security that school had given me. I finished my first year and completely failed my end-of-year exams. I knew I wanted to be cabin crew in my future, but I loved learning about the human body, so I liked the idea of becoming a nurse. I chose psychology, biology, French and Spanish for my A-levels. Looking back, I was covering all bases. If I had to do A-levels, at least it would be in things that I could see had a purpose. Unfortunately, human biology wasn't an option, and I really didn't enjoy the generic biology I had to take. In psychology, my tutor was shocked because I was good at it, but failed in demonstrating what I knew. I tried a different course in my second year and began studying health and social care, but again, it just wasn't for me. That's when I joined the world of work. I had a lot of jobs and generally was great at all of them. I was a people pleaser and I worked hard, so I generally succeeded in all I did. I gained my confidence in myself back, the confidence I had found in high school that left me in college. I always had a strong moral compass, and in the same way I stood up to the bully in high school, I stood up for what was right. This, unfortunately, led to me being bullied by a manager. After he had praised me for my work, I challenged him on why I was treated differently from someone who did the same job as me and started at the same time as me. He didn't like this challenge, and his behaviour thereafter left me in tears daily. I'm grateful for that experience. It pushed me to follow my dream of becoming cabin crew. Not only that, but this experience has also been pivotal in the leader I've become myself. I learned how not to lead people, to always recognise their strengths and nurture and empower them to recognise those in themselves. Flying wasn't long-term for me, but I would urge anyone to follow their dream. The experiences that it gave me, personally and professionally, have stayed with me for life. There's nothing quite like being trapped in a metal tube at 37,000 feet to really hone your people and problem-solving skills. You never worked with the same crew twice. Adaptability became essential. I started university a few weeks before I turned 22, technically a mature student. Due to my age, I was able to get on the course without my A-levels, so my academic challenges didn't hold me back and I was able to complete my diploma in nursing. It wasn't without difficulty, but the nature of the course being 50% practical really helped me. I was a good nurse. I loved helping people and making a difference. My first job was in a high-level neonatal intensive care unit and I was terrified. I wasn't supported and I'd worked too hard to get my nursing pin and I wasn't willing to lose it. So I left and moved into health visiting within 6 months of qualifying. I found my niche and I was good at what I did. I was passionate and I loved my job. Within 12 months, I was back at university to complete my degree in specialist nursing to become a health visitor. This is when the doubt and negativity around my academic ability crept back in again. I really struggled with the academic side of the course and failed most assignments on the first attempt. This is where my difficulties with reading and absorbing information really became an issue. Having to write at this level, compare, contrast and analyse information from multiple texts was just something I couldn't do. I was told my reading wasn't wide enough, which it wasn't, but it was the best I could do. One of my lecturers suggested testing for dyslexia, but I knew that wasn't the issue. I didn't know what the issue was, but I knew dyslexia wasn't it. The old feelings crept back in from my childhood, that memory from primary school, my experience of failing in college. However, as half the course was practical and obtaining a first in my practice, I scraped through with a 2-2 overall. And you know what? Nobody has ever asked me what I got in my degree. It doesn't matter. I got the qualification to do the job I loved and thrived at. I can say with confidence now that I thrived at, because I own my inner and exterior expert, but it wasn't always that way. As much as I loved the work, I never settled. I would get amazing feedback from colleagues and families I worked with. I remember certain comments as this from a member of the team who had worked in the service for decades. "You're the best health visitor I've ever worked with." And from a mum who'd previously disengaged from the service but needed support because social care were involved with the children, who said, "I never liked any other health visitors. I just used to ignore the door when they came." From the best manager I ever had, "Finally, you saved my life. I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for you." From a mum who had postnatal depression but is now a happy, thriving mum of 3 children following the career path of her dreams. Those words reminded me how far I had come. It became my mission to help others find that same confidence, especially parents. I loved hearing these things, especially as a people pleaser, and it gave me the validation that I was achieving what I was aiming to. I never really settled though. I was always looking for the next challenge. I took on a mentorship module at university that I had to do as part of my role and decided I'd do this at master's level to prove to myself that I could. This was a challenge, but I did it and I actually passed first time. I worked at lots of clinics, generally moving after just a year or so. It became my mission to help others find the same confidence, especially parents. I was building my internal expert resource bank and I didn't even know it. For most of my health visiting career, I wasn't a mum. This wasn't by choice. Nature dealt me a difficult hand in that respect, with recurrent miscarriage and fertility issues. It was hard to go back to work after each loss or challenge, but I put the emotional pain in a little box somewhere deep inside and carried on with my job to the best of my ability. Honestly, I don't think not being a parent was of any detriment to my work. If anything, I was able to be truly focused and evidence-based in my approach to the individual needs of the families I worked with, rather than drawing on my personal experience. Once I did have my daughter, though, what changed in me was seeing how the job I loved and had worked so hard for was failing so many families. I couldn't do the job like I'd been trained to. Now the focus was on numbers, statistics, and KPIs, not individuals. I decided that I needed to branch out on my own. I decided to open a nursery. I wanted to support families in the way I believed in, without being driven by statistics or agendas. This was a steep learning curve, and imposter syndrome hit me hard. What did I know about business, education, child development? I wasn't a nursery nurse or a teacher. I lost my confidence. I was a fish out of water, but I had grit and determination and I refused to quit. I had to move away from a model where there was a banded value put on my knowledge and experience. I'd been dictated to what my skills were worth in the NHS. I got my salary, but the level of work I put in was up to me, and I put my heart and soul in. The business world felt uncomfortable, and charging for services felt uncomfortable. I thought everyone in the industry was better than me, knew more than me, had better experience than me. You name it, I probably thought it. However, I navigated having a child who didn't sleep, a business I didn't feel qualified to run, a global pandemic, and the breakdown of my marriage. In spite of all this, I was still here, and so was my business. My nursery was going from strength to strength, no matter what was thrown at me. Today, it's a setting I'm truly proud of, and I recognise the value my knowledge and expertise has brought to make it the nursery it is today. In 2022, I began to realise traits in myself and my daughter. My daughter had always been quirky, but it started to impact her more. I began to suspect she was neurodivergent and went down the rabbit hole of ADHD. She ticked every box at home, yet masked it so well at school they saw nothing. A familiar story so many can relate to. What was shocking to me, though, was I ticked all the boxes. Me. Reading difficulties, never quite fitting in, struggling when systems changed, never settling professionally and consistently looking for the next challenge. All ADHD. Whoa, I have ADHD. We were both diagnosed as combined inattentive hyperactive type ADHD. My diagnosis gave me the ability to be kind to myself, not berate myself for the challenges I had and still face. More than that, though, I began to realise that ADHD was, and always had been, my superpower. The way my mind worked had allowed me to become so determined to succeed and build up skills in so many areas that without it, I likely never would have. I acknowledged around this period it was time to diversify and expand in business and become financially successful because I was now a single parent. Circling back to the beginning, I spoke about the business coach who had held that belief in me that I was an expert. Well, I started working with her around this time too. Everything was coming together. She was someone who understood business and highlighted in me what I hadn't been able to see before. The value that I bring in my combined knowledge, skills, experience and qualifications. It's all of these things that make me an expert in what I do. The ADHD diagnosis allowed me to do the inner work, to heal the worth wounds and negative self-talk that had plagued me throughout various parts and challenges in my life. Feelings of failure, walking away from a successful NHS career, having a nursery business that barely paid the bills, but working silly hours every week. From a failure as a wife and a mother when my marriage broke down, to feelings of just not fitting in. All of it. I've been working on the healing and I've realised all of those experiences have made me who I am today. Mindset is everything. I'm not a failure, I'm a success, and I want to empower you to realise that you are too. Our lives, challenges and experiences make us the experts in our lives. And as women, we need to claim that. Show your light to the world.
Thank you for listening to Show Your Light. If something in this episode landed for you, take a moment to share it. Send it to a friend. Post your biggest takeaway or leave a review, because these stories aren't meant to sit quietly on a shelf. They're meant to be heard. They're meant to be felt and shared. This podcast is a companion to the book, Show Your Light Collective. And you'll find the book link, the author links, and the filmed YouTube version in the show notes. And if you're a woman in business who knows it's time to be seen, to stop shrinking, and to start showing your light, please connect with me. I'll see you in the next episode.